destroyed Iran's defense industrial base, crushing the regime. I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed. And I would add, it's quite sad that NATO turned their backs on the American people over the course of the last 6 weeks when it's the American people who have been funding their defense. As you know, President Trump will be meeting with Secretary Ruta in a couple of hours here at the White House, and I know he looks forward to having a very frank and candid conversation with him. It's something the President has discussed, and I think it's something the President will be discussing in a couple of hours with Secretary.
Is the United States still considering withdrawing from NATO? Is that still a possibility?
It's something the President has discussed, and I think it's something the President will be discussing in a couple of hours with Secretary General Ruta, and perhaps you'll hear directly from the President following that meeting later this afternoon. Thank you.
Would it be acceptable to the United States at the end of all this if the Iranians are able to charge tolls in the Strait of Hormuz?
I think the President was very clear and simplistic in his language last night in his Truth Social post, where he said that this ceasefire is subject to the free, safe, and immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. That's very plain language, and it should be taken at face value. Next week is tax week. You'll hear a lot from the President about how his policies have benefited the
President has said Cuba is next. What's the message to the American people regarding Cuba, and what can Cubans expect in relation to this statement?
Well, look, I think when President Trump said that, and he later clarified after making that statement, that he meant the Cuban regime is bound to fall. The country is very weak. They're in a very weak position economically, obviously, financially. The Cuban people are fed up with their government, as they should be. And these talks and discussions continue to happen at the highest level of our government. I don't have any updates or announcements for you with respect to Cuba policy today.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.